Hello, everybody, it's me, George. And first and foremost, I just want to take the opportunity to say that I hope everybody watching had a lovely, relaxing time over the holiday and festive period. I hope you all got what you needed, whether or not that was spending time with your family, the family you picked for yourself, your friends, or if it was just alone in solemn contemplation. I hope you got a lot of peace, joy, and happiness from it. So let's begin, shall we? I am so excited, guys. I'm beyond excited. Um, because I am doing a book review today of Wished Waters, The Cult and Magic of Water by Gemma Gary, published by Troy Books. And I've been meaning to read this book for a long time. This book, I believe, was first available in Three Hands Press in 2014. And I think for about 8 years I've wanted to read this book, and I've been desperate to get my grubby little mitts on this beautiful piece of work. And I'm not exactly sure and entirely sure why that was in 2014. I'm not making a definite statement, but there was definitely an obstacle there, whether or not it was the cost of postage and packaging at the time, or shipping to the UK, or it was limited edition or limited amount of copies. I'm not entirely sure, so I wouldn't like to say, but there was definitely an obstacle there, and I was like, but I wanted to read it so much, so much, and I am so glad I've read this book. Before we begin, I just want to say that water, the reason why is that water, me as a folk practitioner, as a popular magician, I take a lot of influence concerning the use and working of water within my practice, particularly within wells or springs, natural springs, or holy wells or rivers. And over the years, I've even travelled to Ireland to go to holy wells. I've travelled throughout the UK to go to different holy wells and springs, whether it's working alongside with company and friends, or whether or not it's been completely on my own. Wells have always played a significant amount of influence within my practice. In fact, one place that I used to work, which I'm not going to name, had a river running through it, I would regularly work there with that water and with that river. And another place we used to go, which I will name, which is Audley Edge, had the Wishing Well and had the Wizard's Well. And we used to work there magically as well. And I also used to work there on my own. So water has played an integral role within my practice. I would bottle the water from the wells. You know, I've gone to Chalice Wells, or in Glastonbury, or the Red Spring or the White Spring. So many different places that concern the use of wells or holy wells and working with them. So it is a massive integral part to my practice. I don't know whether or not, I don't know why, in terms of astrologically speaking, my sun and moon signs are fire. So a lot of my workings do concern smoke and fire, but my rising sign is water. So I think perhaps that may have something to do with it. I don't know. I'm unsure. But this book blew my mind. I would thoroughly recommend this book to a folk practitioner just in general, but if you have a particular interest in working water within your magic and your folk magic and your witchcraft, I would 120% recommend this corpus of work, because it is phenomenal. The references within it is so well referenced as well. That's one of the things I really enjoyed about the book. And it was like the gift that kept on giving. You know, like I'd turn the page and I'd be like, ooh, okay, ooh, oh my God. Like it would literally, I'd be like, oh my God, wow. And the information was just constant, particularly concerning the use of holy wells and the ways in which practitioners would work with them magically. And I think that that's something that I really appreciate about Gemma's work, and a couple of other authors as well, is that I think there is this kind of, Martin Duffy, if I'm not wrong, actually spoke about this, that it's in his books, he also does this as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, and apologies if I am wrong, mentioning that, you know, oh, this is what they used to do, this is what folk practitioners used to do, and this is another working that they did, and this is another working that they did. So it gives room for the folk practitioner, the modern day folk practitioner, to be like, really? Did they? Oh, I like that, but I'm going to tweak that and I'm going to apply that to a modern day context. And that's what I really, really appreciate about the kind of books that do that, because I think it gives room for that creative energy within folk magic. It gives room for you to put a piece of yourself in your work in. And that creative energy, in my opinion, is also part of the magic. That ability and opportunity, really, because that's what these books do, give you the opportunity to work older forms of praxis, but by putting yourself in it and making tweaks that suit you as a practitioner and as a person more. And that's what I really, really enjoy about this book. It definitely has inspired me. In fact, there is a working or two that I've picked up from this that I am definitely going to be using. There's also information as well that I did not know. For instance, there was information in here that as a practitioner, I've seen older forms of spells and I've tweaked them over the years. And there was stuff in here that people done historically that I would read and I was like, I've done that. Like I've actually done that. And I just thought that that was me being creative and modern. But there's stuff in here that I've actually done that I was like, I didn't actually know that was a thing. And I really enjoyed that. I loved that. There was so many different ways, for instance, in which a person could work the famous Clutie charm, taking a piece of fabric, immersing it in the water and tying it to a tree. Um, there was so many ways in which someone could work that, that is noted down in this book that isn't just for health. Like when I always thought of Clutie, I was like, oh, okay, like health or but no, there are different ways. And as I said, there are ways in which people have worked with wells that I'm like, I've done that. I didn't even know that was a thing. Or rivers or bodies of water that I was like, I've done that. And I loved it. And the information given herein as well, and let me make the disclaimer before I say this, that this is in no way a read to any author at all. It's really not. But I definitely think that it is something that a lot of folk practitioners think of now and are aware of now, myself included as well, that I think quite often a lot of folk magic, particularly concerning British folk magic, tends to get redone. Okay, so I think the things like we all know charming bands or witch bottles or certain image magic or certain things like that. And I think as modern day folk witches or folk practitioners, we look for things that are different. We look for spells and magic that's completely different that we haven't heard of before. And we're like, oh, I love that. And that's actually something that I tried to do within my book, Barbarous Words. But away from that, going back to the subject at hand, I think that a lot of the material we see tends to, in the nicest possible way, regurgitated is the wrong word, but tends to get redone. We see it a lot in a lot of books and a lot of modern day books concerning cunning folk practice and folk magical practice. And so I think now, whenever a lot of folk magical practitioners, and I guess I can only speak for me, but also with what I've seen with other folk practitioners, is a lot of them kind of almost say silently, but some not so silently, okay, but is it like different content in there? Is there different workings in there that I've not seen before? Or is it the sort of similar stuff that we see? This book has workings in it that are completely different, that are very, very different. There are some things that we have seen through the ages, but actually the majority of stuff in this book, the majority of workings in this book, I haven't heard of before, I haven't seen before, and they are wonderfully referenced, as mentioned. So this book is very, very different. And that's what I loved about this book, because it was so creative, and it was so well referenced, but it was all stuff that I hadn't heard of before in older day praxis, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I read this book in 2 days. I think I've said that, but I'm going to say it again. I read it in 2 days. I love this book. I also liked how Gemma went not just only into the countryside with ways in which cunning folk and practitioners would work with water, she also went into the city. And that is something that I find I think it's so useful because I think the majority of people these days, myself included, like as much as many people might watch it and think, oh, he lives in this like wonderful little cottage in the middle of the city, like in the middle of the countryside. Like I never have. You know, I'm a city boy. I grew up in the city. I lived in the city, whether that's different cities, London, Manchester, Paris, Edinburgh, Glasgow. I've lived in 5 cities in my life. Wow. But the point is, that, you know, cities are, for a lot of people, their environment in which they work in. So I like the fact that Gemma gave a couple of examples from the city, because I think that is important. So I really, really enjoyed that. I absolutely enjoyed that. I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is one of, if not my most favourite publication from Troy Books and Gemma Gary. This is on the top ranking for me. This is my favourite Gemma Gary book. 120% would say that. And I love a lot of her publications. I love a lot of her work, as you guys will know over the years. But this is without a shadow of a doubt my favourite book that Gemma Gary has produced. And it is so beautifully written, as always, and so eloquently put. It's inspiring. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I'm trying to think of other things to say because there was a couple of other points here that I had to say. Think, George. Yes, that's the other thing as well. I also love how, as examples, Gemma not only gave older aspects of practice from cunning folk we know way back when, from 1800s or the early modern period, she also gave examples of more modern practitioners such as Robert Cochrane or Roy Bowers or Andrew Chumley. And I love that because I think that's so, so important, because I think by referencing older practitioners and then we have the more newer practitioners, I think it bridges the gap. It helps us to bridge the gap as practitioners between the old and the new. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the way that she done that. It is more reference to older sources, by the way, if anyone's interested, but there are newer sources here, and also newer sources here in terms of ritualistic magic, which I really enjoyed, because I think a lot of the times there's a lot of books about folk magic in witchcraft, and there's a lot of books about ritualistic magic in witchcraft, but there's not many books on both. And this is mainly more folk magic, I have to say, but there are aspects here of ritualistic magic, particularly at the end. And I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful way to, it was just a beautiful way to finish this book off. Um, just incredible. Such an incredible body of work. And I would highly recommend this to any folk practitioner. And I think that it's important for folk practitioners, folk practitioners to have knowledge of, because they can then see how much prevalence and influence the act of working magically with water, aqua magica, had an impact on cunning folk, had an impact on a lot of folk practitioners that we have. So yeah, I would 120% say this is my favourite book that Gemma Gary has done as of now. It's incredible. I've waited quite a long time for this book. I've waited 9 years to read this book, ever since first seeing it on Three Hands Press, and it is so worth the wait. It's an incredible corpus of work, and I urge anyone interested in folk magic and witchcraft to get this book, to get your hands on a copy of this book, because I think the information herein is invaluable to a folk practitioner and to a witch as well, particularly a traditional witch or a folkloric witch. 120% incredible. One of the things I will say as a disclaimer, and I do say this quite a lot, is that I think if anyone is wanting to do Clutie magic around trees, definitely think of the material that you are using, because I think that there's a lot of material that some people can use that isn't biodegradable that I've seen on some trees, such as in Avebury, one of the thorn trees there, or in Glastonbury, or around different trees as well, where the material used is not biodegradable and is actually quite toxic and quite harmful to the environment. So definitely, if you are going to partake in Cluty Magic, use a material that is quite biodegradable, that is naturally biodegradable. That's what I've done each and every time. So yeah, that's definitely what I would say. But other than that, yeah, I had to do this book review because it's perfect. It really is perfect, and it has been an absolute gem to read. Literally within 2 days, I vacuumed it up because I think it's because I've had 2 days off. So it doesn't take, you know, it's not going to take 2 minutes to read and you're like, I'm done. That's just me. I just got excited and I have time off over the holiday and festive period. So I really went for it. But yeah, over and out. And I hope this book review helps. I hope you get what you wanted from this book review as well. And I want to take the opportunity to wish you all a very happy new year, a very happy 2023. And this is going to be my last video for the year. So we've got next year. This is my last video for 2022, but I felt like I had to talk about this book. I had to, because of how incredibly preserving the information that she's put out there for British folk magic, for folk witchcraft. It's beautiful in every sense of the word. I think for a popular folk magician, for a folk witch, for a trad witch, a traditional witch, 100% I would recommend Wished Waters, The Cult and Magic of Water by Gemma Gary, published by Troy Books. What a gem. What an absolute delight. So yes, I wish you all a very happy 2023. Over and out, and peace.